Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. Environmental pollution, air, water, soil, land, and then we also studied nuclear disasters, nuclear hazards. And then finally, we also, if you remember, we looked at solid waste management. Okay. So now let's look at the next topic, which is environmental laws. Okay. So remember that your exam, the internal exam is offline. Okay. I have written it in the chat box also. Your exam is offline. It is not going to be online. So just like your other exams, EVS exam is also offline. And this topic is there for your test. Okay. So everyone, please pay attention. Okay. So now let's look at the need for environmental laws. Why do we need these laws? What is the aim of having environmental legislation in place? So the first reason for that is to protect humans, of course, to protect resources, to protect habitats, and to protect animals, right? So for all of these, we need protection of the law, right? So because if we have the law, then we can enforce it. We need to promote economic growth with environmental, human health, and cultural safeguards, right? So there must be a process for dispute resolutions, right? Like for example, there must be also a process in place for decision making. Like for example, there is a lot of poaching, illegal hunting of animals for their body parts, right? So we need a wildlife protection act, right? Because we need to hold whoever is doing this illegal hunting, illegal trade of wildlife body parts, we need to hold them responsible, right? So we need the protection of law. So therefore, there must be a need for decision-making processes, for management agreements, and processes for dispute resolution. Okay. Then we also need laws because we must create some administrative and legal structures, right, which are capable of enabling a very sustainable type of development. I told you in the earlier semester itself that sustainable development is the middle path between development on one side and environmental conservation on the other side, right? So if we have to, as a developing country, if we have to build flyovers, we have to build roads, dams, then we also need to protect environment. So it has to be both ways. And if we have laws that focus on sustainable development, on ecologically sustainable and socially sustainable development, then it's going to be to our merit. Our future generations would be destroyed if we did not have environment laws, right? Because the nature of human is indeed very selfish. We have even started polluting the outer space. The Arctic regions are being drilled. And so it's very, very vital that we think of our future generations. And one of the ways that you can do it is by these environment laws. Okay. Of course, these laws also determine who can use natural resources and on what terms, right? So remember that hunting of certain animals is allowed, but hunting of critically endangered, hunting of other such animals is totally not allowed because of a lot of dwindling populations. Okay, so the first act we are looking at is the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act. Okay, of course, we do know that the Air Act was introduced in 1981 to prevent and control air pollution in India. Okay. Now, what are the objectives of this act? So, this topic is actually fairly theoretical, right? But I have given you a few case studies so you can relate to it, you can understand it better. Yes. Uh, anyone, any volunteer who can read this slide? Chaitrali? Yes, Siddhi? Where is Maitreyi? Vaibhav? Yes, Sakshi? So the objectives of this act is to provide for prevention, control, and abatement of air pollution. Now, what does this act also do? It has created a central and a state board. So you are aware of the Central Pollution Control Board, and similarly, there is also a state state pollution prevention control board. So we have CPCB and state boards. So these boards have been established with a view to implement this act. Now, what are the functions of these boards? So the central board, what it does is it plans and executes a nationwide program for the prevention, control, and abatement of air pollution. The state boards, which are established in all the states, they report to the central board. So the central board has to coordinate the activities of the state board. What does it do? What else does it do? It collects, compiles, and publishes data. All the data that you have on air pollution, the air quality, the type of pollutants, all of that data is collected by the central board. And it also performs other functions as may be prescribed from time to time. Now look at the functions of the state board. The state boards can advise the state government on any matter concerning the prevention and control of air pollution. So what do? They inspect any control equipment, any industrial plant or manufacturing process. So you know that industries, they have to put filters, they have to put air filters so that they do not directly emit polluting vapors, polluting smoke into the environment. And so it is the duty of these state board officials to actually, they can go and inspect the industry. They can ask the manufacturing unit to show them whether they have put up these filters or not, right? So they are empowered that way. They are also empowered to provide standards for emissions, right, to be laid down for different industrial plants. So industries are that way regulated because the state board, which is established under this act, will actually make standards, right? Like, for example, the amount of permissible carbon that you can release is between this range. So if you are emitting beyond that range, then you will be susceptible to some fine, right? So this is what the state board does. And lastly, what does it also do? Establish a laboratory to perform this function, right? So the state board also establishes a laboratory to perform this function. Now, what are some government initiatives under this act which have been taken place over the years? So, you must have heard of CNG, right? So, introduction of cleaner gaseous fuels like CNG, then the National Air Quality Index. So, especially in Pune, of course, you do see them. We have in the big squares, there is data, right? It tells you what is the air quality today. So that launching of that index has been done under this act. Then banning of burning of biomass. So you cannot burn dried leaves. That is not allowed under this act. What else has been initiated under this act? Promotion of public transport network. Promotion of public transport network. Installation of monitoring devices. Installation of monitoring devices. Then what else has been done? Regulating the bursting of pollution emitting crackers and compulsory PUC. So you know pollution under control, that certificate that you're supposed to keep for your two-wheelers, for your four-wheelers, that has been initiated under this act, which is your Air Pollution and Prevention Control Act. Okay, so this was an overview of what this act is, what are the objectives, and what are some initiatives. Okay, so because this topic, I mean, if you look at it on the internet, if you search it, you will get a wide variety, wide data on it. But of course, for your SY level, we have used your reference books, and according to that, we have made these subtopics. Okay. Now look at the second act. What is it? Water Prevention and Control Act. So just like your Air Prevention and Control Act, there is a Water Prevention and Control Act of 1974. It has been enacted to provide for the prevention and control of water pollution. And what does it also do? It maintains and restores the wholesomeness of water. Now, under this act also, we have a central board and a state board. Look at what the central board does. So there is a central water board. It advises the central government on prevention and control of water pollution. It coordinates the activities of the state boards and resolves disputes among them. It plans and organizes the training of people engaged in the prevention, control, and abatement of water pollution. It also provides for technical assistance and guidance to the state boards. So just like the Central Air Pollution Control Board, CPCB, and SPCB, there is also similar structure under the Water Act. So there is a central board which collects data from the state board. Now, what does the state board also do? The state board, it actually encourages, conducts investigations in the matters of water pollution. Okay, it can actually, the officials, they can actually go and inspect sewage treatment plants. They can go and inspect water treatment plants or other industries also. Then what else can they do? They can actually go and ask for data, right? Data relating to the treatment of water, or if the industry is discharging any waste into the river or other aquatic sources, it can go and ask for this data. Then it can evolve methods of utilization of trade effluents, okay? And it can also think of or evolve economical and reliable methods of water treatment. It can also collaborate with the central board in organizing the training of people, right? Because all these boards have officials, they have to be trained. Now, what are some initiatives that have been made under this act? So you must have heard of the Ganga Action Plan, the Namami Gange project for cleaning the waters of the river Ganga. So the river Ganga supports the largest amount of population in India. And thereby there are also many industries along the river. So it's very, very vital that it has a very separate and targeted action plan. Then, of course, there is a treatment of sewage water and industrial effluents before releasing it into water bodies. There is a national water quality monitoring network So, just like we have the National Air Quality Index, there is also a water quality network. So this network is very widespread all across the states and the union territories. And it collects data on water quality. There are also, it can also, that under the water board, you can establish laboratories, you can encourage research. So products like Brigoli, right, which is what? A byproduct of the paper industry. If it is put in oil spills, it can actually go and absorb the oil. Or there are some oil-eating bacteria which can also absorb oil, right? So therefore, they help in the control of water pollution. So supporting such research, evolving such research is also done under this act. Okay, these are the initiatives. These are the popular initiatives that have been done under the Water Prevention and Control Act. Okay, now look at any questions up till now? Any questions? So everyone is clear with these two acts? Okay, now look at the third act, which is the Wildlife Protection Act. The third one is the Wildlife Protection Act. So when we studied biodiversity and conservation in the last semester, you must have heard, you must remember about the different threats to wildlife. Poaching, loss of habitat, industrialization, advent of the agricultural land into the forest land. All of these are threatening biodiversity and also threatening wildlife. Now, you must have, if you remember, I told you the example of elephants, right? So elephants, especially in South India, they are unable to cross the railway lines. There is a lot of man-animal conflict. So the Wildlife Protection Act was established in 1972 for the protection of plants and animal species. Okay, we have already seen a drastic decrease in the flora and fauna, which can cause a lot of ecological imbalance. And so the need for this act was extremely important, because before this act, there were only 5 national parks. Whereas after the introduction of the Wildlife Protection Act, we now have a good network of wildlife protection, a good network of national parks in our country. So the salient features of this act, what does it do? It provides for the formation of Wildlife Advisory Board. So just like the CPCB, there is also a Wildlife Advisory Board. Then what has been done under this act? We have made a comprehensive list of the endangered wildlife species of our country. What else has been done under this act? The act prohibits the hunting of endangered species. It provides for the establishment of wildlife sanctuaries, national parks. Okay, and also the responsibilities of the forest officials has been described under this act. So some initiatives that have been started under this act is, of course, all these projects, the Tiger Project, the Elephant Project, Project Tiger, Project Elephant. Then we have a wide network of national parks, wildlife sanctuaries in our country. all of these have been legally established, right? So they are legally established under the Wildlife Protection Act because, you know, if anything goes wrong, if there is hunting, if there is illegal agriculture that goes on in these national parks, then under this act, the government can take action. Okay. Now, the next act, the fourth act that we are seeing now is the Forest Conservation Act. The Forest Conservation Act. The FCA, what happens in FCA? It's established in 1980. What are the features of this act? It was passed with a view to check deforestation. The act covers the aspects which are left out by the Act of 1927. Okay, so the forest, we had a very old Forest Conservation Act of 1927, but this act was later amended in 1988. Okay, so after 27, in 80 it was made, and then later it was amended in 88. Okay, so the aim of this act is to stop the conversion of forest land into non-forest purposes. Okay, so the aim of this act is to stop the conversion of these forested area into non-forest areas. So what are the objectives of this act? To, of course, protect forest, flora, fauna, and other diverse ecological components. So what does it also do? To promote the integrity of forests. Because you know what happens? There is expansion of forest, there is expansion of agriculture, industries, all of that into the forested area. And so the animals lose their homes. There are a lot of man-animal conflicts. The life of these wildlife gets threatened. And so the forest limit, right, the borders of the forest, the space, the expanse of the forest must be conserved. So this act helps in the protection of the integrity, the territory, and the individuality of the forests. What else does it do? It protects the forests and prevents deforestation that will lead to land erosion and subsequent degradation of the land. It also prevents the loss of biodiversity. And of course, it prevents the conversion of forests into agricultural lands, grazing lands, or building of business or residential units. Under this act, what has been the government initiatives? We have a national forest policy. There is the conservation of reserve forest, and there's also adopting a forestation scheme. So you must have heard of CAMPA, which is a national afforestation fund. So every time any industry or even highway authorities, if they are cutting down trees, they have to pay some compensation into the CAMPA fund. And then that fund actually uses the money for afforestation in other places. So this way we are ensuring that more trees are planted than they are being cut down. Okay, is that clear with you? So this is the importance of the forest acts. Okay, the case of these environment laws, the case of this is that we need to study them because we need to have a basic outline, right, of these acts for your syllabus. Of course, we don't need to dig deep into exactly all the provisions, but we need to know an overview of it. Okay, we need to know an overview of it. Therefore, in our syllabus, we have these important laws, right? So we studied the Air Prevention and Control Act, the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, the Water Prevention and Control Act, and very important, the Forest Conservation Act. Okay, all these acts are extremely important from conservation point of view, from ecology point of view. Okay, that is why these boards have been established. That is why we have the Central Pollution Control Board, or that is why we also have the Wildlife Advisory Board, right? So these therefore laws highlight the need for a lot of environmental protection. So you must have one interesting thing is even your national parks, right? So national parks are also demarcated. So there is a very core area in the national park, which is followed by a buffer area, and then you have a transition area. So all of these have been demarcated by the law. Okay, because hunting is not allowed in the core area. Tourism is not allowed in the core area. The core area of a national park is where the animals raise their offsprings, where they reproduce. So in the transition area, all these activities like tourism, wildlife safari, a bit of agriculture, village settlements, all of these will be allowed. But it will not be allowed under the core area. So if someone is doing that, then they will be susceptible to fine or they will be jailed according to the whatever provisions are there in the law. Okay. You know, the case of these laws is such that there are also a set of international laws. Not only are there national laws, there are also international laws. Now, these international laws have been established by United Nations, and each and every country must follow them, right? So, in our lecture tomorrow, we will study the rest of the laws. Is that clear with everyone? So today we have studied the national laws. So I don't want to confuse you. Tomorrow we will study the international laws. Okay. Any questions with the laws that we studied today? Any questions?
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes.
Not about today, but I just wanted to ask, whatever our syllabus is, the first lessons about air pollution and that, are you going to share that with us on Drive?
I have already shared your study material with your coordinator. Did you not get it? In your division WhatsApp groups, just ask. I have already shared it. Your teachers must give it to you.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
So there are, I think there are 3, 4, 5. I think there are 5 PPTs. So there is all those pollution topics. Then there is that solid waste management, and also this current topic that we're studying, that is environment laws. So make sure that you get all those PPTs. In your group, just ask. I have already shared it.
Okay, ma'am.
What about other divisions? Have you all received it? Other divisions? Biotech, computer? Okay. Siddhi, so which division is that, Siddhi? I think you're division A, right? Okay. And Jahnavi, or which division?
Biotechnology.
Okay. So I think you have Gayatri ma'am, right? Just check with her.
Sure, ma'am.
Others, division A and C also, please check.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So we studied these 5 important laws today. Let's continue with the international laws tomorrow. Okay, and then we will complete this topic. So your exam will be offline, just like the other subjects. So make sure you study well. I'll just share the attendance link. Any more questions?